And if I told you that the reason why your most desperate claims don't work has nothing to do with you, but with a fundamental error in the language you use with the universe, there is a popular belief that manifesting is simply a matter of repeating a positive phrase over and over again. But thousands of people try this every day and end up more frustrated than before, seeing their problems, instead of disappearing, seem to grow larger. We were taught to fight, to force positive thinking, to visualize with effort. But one of the greatest metaphysical teachers of the 20th century, Florence Scovelin, discovered something that changed everything. She understood that the conscious mind, with its logic and thoughts, is the guardian that sabotages our desires. While you try to affirm, "I am abundant," your mind yells at you. Look at your bank account. Mas Florence discovered a secret that comes from ancient Jewish wisdom. A word that cannot be fought. An anchor word that acts as a master key, bypassing the guardian of doubt and opening the doors of infinite mind so that the miracle occurs, sometimes within hours. In this video, we will not only reveal this word, but also tell the true story of a Jewish man who was 24 hours away from being evicted, and how, using this simple word, he activated a solution so precise and unexpected that it defied all logic. If you are ready to stop fighting and learn to receive, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the knowledge you are about to hear is not found in conventional self-help books. This knowledge comes straight from the ancient practices of the Jewish people, a people who for centuries have mastered the principles of prosperity and manifestation. The fundamental problem lies in the duality of language. For every word we try to affirm, the subconscious mind knows its direct response and presents it as proof. Florence Scovelin understood that there must be a way to communicate with the source that does not activate this resistance. She studied the sacred Jewish texts deeply and discovered that Jewish sages have known this secret for thousands of years. In Jewish tradition, the word has absolute creative power, as it is written in Genesis. Florence understood this and integrated this wisdom into her teachings, discovering a word that disarms the intellect and speaks directly to the higher self, silencing the noise of doubt and acting as a direct bridge to the field of infinite possibilities. To truly understand his power, we must travel to the exact moment when David, a Jewish man, stands on the edge of the abyss. David lived in Sao Paulo, in the Bom Retiro neighborhood. The crisis began with an envelope silently sliding under his door, a document informing him, "Final eviction notice." He had exactly 24 hours to pay the full amount of the debt or leave the property. This situation was the culmination of months of slow and painful decline after his small clothing business was knocked down by a bad investment and market changes. The pandemic had devastated the clothing trade, and David, like many Brazilians, saw his world collapse. David was not a lazy man. He had tried hard, was honest in his business dealings, but now he felt as if he were drowning. He tried everything the books promised, repeated affirmations of prosperity while the echo of his debts reverberated in his ears. He felt like an imposter, uttering words of faith that his reality brutally contradicted. He had exhausted all logical avenues. He asked friends for help, only to receive looks of pity and empty pockets. Humanly, there was no visible solution. David's true imprisonment was not his circumstances, but his own mind. Florence Scovelin had a term for this mental state: carnal reasoning, the mind that operates exclusively based on the evidence of the five senses. She realized that this mind is incapable of producing a miracle, because a miracle operates according to a higher law, a spiritual law that the Jewish sages knew deeply. In Jewish tradition, there is a fundamental concept called emunah, which is more than simple faith. It is an absolute certainty, an unwavering trust in divine power. David's prayers were poisoned by this logic. He asked for divine help with one part of his being, while another part immediately whispered that it was useless. This internal contradiction sent a confusing vibrational signal to the universe, a desire canceled by doubt. It was in his darkest hour that a distant memory emerged, the name of an elder from the synagogue, Lady Rachel, mentioned months ago. She was described as a truth practitioner who taught people how to make the invisible laws of the universe work in their favor, using the teachings of Jewish wisdom. With the eviction notice in his pocket, David made a decision that his logical mind considered absurd. He used his last coins for a bus fare to Mrs. Raquel's address. It was an act of desperation, a complete abandonment of reason in favor of a remote possibility. Mrs. Raquel's house was a serene space where the atmosphere seemed filled with a singular tranquility. David recounted his story with a trembling voice. He hoped for compassion, but received a precise diagnosis. His real problem was a civil war waged within his own conscience. Mrs. Raquel explained that the universe does not respond to pleas, but to the state of our consciousness. Every time he claimed to be prosperous, his subconscious responded with a resounding, "You are not." David was trying to paint a new picture over a bad canvas, fighting against his own mind. Mrs. Raquel did not offer a magic external solution, but indicated that the only battle he needed to win was the one fought within his own thoughts. And she had the perfect tool, a word from the ancient Hebrew tradition. Mrs. Raquel proceeded to illuminate the reason for this self-sabotage. The subconscious mind is the guardian of our deepest beliefs, formed throughout life, with the function of keeping us safe within the limits of what we consider normal. For David's mind, struggle and lack became normal, while abundance was perceived as unknown and dangerous territory. The logical mind intervenes, demanding proof, and when it finds no answers, it classifies the statement as fantasy. The enemy was not the lack of opportunities, but the programming of his own mind that rejected help before it could arrive. Next, Mrs. Raquel revealed to David one of the most subtle spiritual laws, the law of non-resistance. Anything we fight against mentally, we strengthen. Mental effort is a sign of doubt. When we are truly aligned with faith, there is no effort, only calm and certainty. Mrs. Raquel used a powerful metaphor. She imagined that your desire was like planting a seed, and mental effort is like digging up the seed every 5 minutes to see if it is growing. David understood that his entire approach was wrong, treating manifestation as a battle. Mrs. Raquel showed a different path, the path of surrender, acceptance, and trust. With the established foundation, the moment for practical instruction arrived. Mrs. Raquel leaned forward and her voice took on a tone of sacred revelation. She told David that to bypass the resistance of his logical mind, he needed a word that his intellect could not analyze, debate, or deny. She would present a word that represented the final result, the fulfilled condition, encapsulating the essence of the divine solution without describing it in form. The word, Mrs. Raquel revealed, came from ancient Hebrew and was used by the sages when they needed to declare an unshakable spiritual truth. The Hebrew word is batash, pronounced batach, meaning to be secure, confident, protected like an impregnable fortress. In Jewish tradition, this word carries the weight of millennia of faith. When prophets declared batach, they were saying that their trust in God was like a fortress that no human force could penetrate. By using such an abstract and powerful word, David did not give his logical mind any specific details to generate doubts. By declaring his financial situation as batach, he elevated the problem above the realm of appearances and entrusted it to infinite power. This technique is an advanced form of what Florence Scovel Shinn calls the word of power, not a petition, but a decree. It is aligning human consciousness with divine consciousness, which only knows perfection. The word acts as a vibrational frequency that dissipates the energy of fear and replaces it with the energy of absolute certainty. In Kabbalah, there is a teaching that Hebrew letters are not just symbols but portals of divine energy. The word batach is composed of the letters bet, tet, and chaf, and together they create a frequency of safety, protection, and absolute confidence. Mrs. Raquel did not leave David alone with the word. She gave him an exact protocol. First, he was to write the word batach on a piece of paper and place it where he could see it constantly. Then the main instruction. Each time the thought of eviction appeared in his mind, he should not fight it. He should simply look at the word and calmly say, "My world and my affairs are batach. They are safe in the divine fortress." Finally, he should act normally, prepare his meal, read a book, as if victory was already assured. This act of faith was the final proof, the demonstration to the universe that his confidence did not depend on external evidence. The return trip was profoundly different. David held in his mind not a business plan, but a single word, batach. Something inside him began to change. It wasn't euphoria, but a strange and deep calm. Upon entering his apartment, the eviction notice was on the table. For a moment, a wave of panic threatened to rise, but this time David had a tool. He grabbed a piece of paper and firmly wrote the word batach, placing it next to the eviction notice, creating a deep visual contrast. On one side, the sentence of the material world. On the other, the decree of the spiritual king. The night advanced, and with it, the temptation of fear. It was then that David consciously applied the teaching for the first time. He did not confront the thoughts. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said the word aloud. Batach. He felt the vibration of the word in his chest and added, "My world and my affairs are batach. They are safe in the divine fortress." The response was not a flash of light. It was something more subtle. The whirlwind of anxious thoughts did not cease suddenly, but it lost its power. The thoughts of fear remained there, but they could not penetrate his core. David continued with this exercise all night. Every time a shadow of doubt crossed his mind, he responded with the same calm word, Batach. The word ceased to be a strange concept and became part of his own energy. Little by little, the true inner miracle occurred, which always precedes the outer miracle. The desperate anxiety that had consumed him for weeks began to dissolve. In its place, a deep sense of peace was established. Not the peace of someone who had the solution in their hands, but the peace of someone who fully surrendered the problem to a power infinitely greater. For the first time in months, David slept deeply. David woke up with the first rays of light. It was the day of eviction, but something was radically different. The panic knot that had been in his stomach for months disappeared. In its place was an expectant calm. Following the instruction to act normally, he got up, washed his face, said his morning prayers, and started preparing coffee. Every movement was deliberate, calm. It was the behavior of a man expecting a guest rather than an executioner. His state of peace was his shield. He was no longer vibrating at the frequency of fear. He changed his point of attraction. Around noon, the sound was heard. A firm knock on the door. David walked to the door, and in his mind the word Batach echoed one last time. He opened the door and discovered something he never expected. At the threshold there was no owner, but a man David did not recognize. A man with a prosperous appearance, wearing a well-tailored suit and a kind expression. The man introduced himself as a businessman, an investor who had been living in Sao Paulo for many years. He explained that during his youth he worked as a salesman in that very building, and that this place held special memories for him. The businessman explained that he was buying several properties in the area for commercial renovation and wanted to acquire the entire building where David lived. He had spoken with the owner and discovered there was a tenant facing difficulties. David, puzzled, invited the man inside. The investor looked around with obvious nostalgia, spoke of the morning light coming through the window and how it inspired him. After a few minutes, he got straight to the point. To close the deal, he needed the apartment to be vacated quickly, but he didn't want to simply evict David. So he made a completely unexpected proposal. He was willing to pay a generous compensation for him to leave voluntarily, knew of a nearby building with available apartments, and could facilitate a contract on better terms. And then he uttered the phrase that made the universe fall into place. "I am prepared to pay off your outstanding debts and give an additional amount so you can settle comfortably in a new place." David could hardly process the information. This complete stranger who appeared out of nowhere was offering to pay his debts and even give extra money. With a voice struggling to stay steady, David asked about the amount. The sum the businessman mentioned was exactly the total of the debt with the landlord, plus an additional amount sufficient to cover several months' rent in a new apartment and have a small capital. It was the perfect response, tailor-made by infinite intelligence. The businessman immediately withdrew a checkbook. David, in a state of sacred awe, could only nod. Moments later, he had the check in his hands, a piece of paper that was the physical manifestation of a word spoken in faith. It was proof, tangible evidence that invisible laws were as real as the laws of gravity. When the owner arrived an hour later, ready to carry out the eviction, he was met with a completely transformed David. With the calm that disarmed the owner, David explained the situation and paid a check for the full amount of the debt. David not only saved his house but gained something infinitely more valuable. He acquired the practical knowledge that he was not a victim of circumstances. Days later, David returned to Mrs. Raquel's house. He was no longer the desperate man who had first crossed the door. His posture was upright, his gaze clear. He recounted every detail of the astonishing sequence of events. Mrs. Raquel listened with a serene smile, without showing surprise. To her, this was not an extraordinary miracle, but the natural functioning of divine law. She explained to David that the businessman had not appeared by chance. It was what Florence Scovel Shinn called a divine agent or channel. Once David aligned his vibration with faith, the infinite mind activated the person, place, and perfect condition to deliver his good. David then understood the deepest lesson. His work was not to find a businessman or to idealize a plan. His only task was to purify his own conscience. By doing so, he became a magnet for the solution that was prepared for him in the invisible plane. David's story is not simply a tale about receiving money. It is a masterful lesson on the power of non-resistance and intelligent faith applied through ancient Jewish wisdom. The wisdom that Florence Scovel Shinn and the Jewish tradition passed down to us is that truth is not an effort, but a release. The word batach that David used was the tool that allowed him to shut down that mental static. It didn't eliminate the circumstances overnight. It eliminated the internal resistance to the solution, which is the only real obstacle we ever face. The universe is in a constant state of giving. Abundance, peace, and perfect solutions flow eternally. We don't need to create this flow. We just need to stop resisting it. David's story proves that the moment we cease our internal struggle, the universe rushes to fill us with a good that exceeds our highest expectations. Now is the time to receive this word not as a concept in a story, but as a tool for your own life. The word that Mrs. Raquel used comes directly from ancient Hebrew, batach. Repeat in your mind, batach. Feel its solidity. Its power has no opposition. When you declare that your health is batach, you are affirming that you are protected by divine fortress. When you declare that your peace is batach, you are protected from external chaos. When you declare that your supply is batach, you are elevating your consciousness above the figures in your bank account and anchoring it in the truth of the infinite source. Use it as David used it, not as a desperate plea, but as a declaration of truth already established in the kingdom of the Spirit. Convert it into your anchor amid any storm. Write it down, meditate on it, allow its vibration to dissolve doubt and put you in a state of calm and pleasant expectation. So that this wisdom is not just inspiring but transforms into real change in your life, here are the exact steps. First, identify the area of your life where you feel the most anxiety or lack. Second, instead of affirming what you want, simply declare the current state of that situation as batach. For example, if you face a financial challenge, your declaration will be, "My divine supply is batach. It is secure in the divine fortress." Third, every time a thought of fear or doubt appears, do not fight these thoughts. Simply repeat your declaration calmly. My peace is batach. My health is batach. My family is batach. Fourth step, act as if victory is already assured. Continue your day with serene confidence that infinite intelligence is moving all the pieces in your favor. Release the need to know how or when the solution will appear. Fifth step, create a daily ritual with the word. In the morning, upon waking, place your hand over your heart and declare 3 times, "My world is batach. My affairs are batach. My life is batach." At night, before sleeping, repeat the same process. Consciousness is the only true reality. What you hold in faith and conviction must manifest in your outer world. Today you received a key to claim this territory. The word batach is more than a technique. It is a reminder of your true nature. You are a spiritual being whose essence is abundance, joy, and peace. Anything that contradicts this is simply a temporary appearance. Do not let this knowledge be fleeting. Take this teaching, apply it daily with discipline, and prepare to see doors open. The same power granted to David is available to you here and now. Use it and reclaim the magnificent destiny that awaits you. You were not born to fight your whole life. You were born to prosper.